a further contribution and expansion on our last two videos, in which we talked about suggestion and autosuggestion. So I titled today's Neville Goddard conversation, "You are lavish, steady, and dependable in your being." Now, some of you might already know the inspiration for this title here. It's this quote. Neville states, "A newspaper man related to me that our great scientist, Robert Millikan, once told him that he had set a goal for himself at an early age when he was still very poor and unproven in the great work he was to do in the future. He condensed his dream of greatness and security into a simple statement, which statement implied that his dream of greatness and security was already realized. Then he repeated the statement over and over again to himself until the idea of greatness and security filled his mind and crowded all other ideas out of his consciousness." These may not have been the words of Dr. Millikan, but they are those given to me, and I quote, "I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit." As I have said repeatedly, everything depends upon our attitude towards ourselves. That which we will not affirm as true of ourselves cannot develop in our life. So let's discuss this further. Let's dive deeper into it and relate it over to the foundation that was laid in Tuesday's video regarding suggestion and autosuggestion. We could look at this and say, what are we suggesting to ourselves? What are we saying I am to in relation to the different aspects regarding what we want to consciously instill within ourselves, thus perhaps bringing forth unnecessary reactivity or certain kinds of behavioral patterns or emotional responses in which we seem to interpret, the key is seeming, to interpret the behaviors or the emotional responses as a problem rather than going straight to the cause within, the one cause. I am. That which we say I am to, or we could say identify with, imagine, think about. Now, when we look at this here, he says, then he repeated the statement over and over again to himself until the idea of greatness and security filled his mind and crowded all other ideas out of his consciousness. See, the truth of it is when we've made peace with certain aspects, certain interpretations about ourselves in relation to life, in relation to who we really are, how we really want to live, it is easy for us to just say the statement once and bring us into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Remember, feeling is the secret, because once we can imagine or say something to ourselves, which brings us into that feeling of resonance with our vision, then we move towards, I always say this, intuition guides us to the people, the environment, the circumstance, the information leading to the realization, which we call this the bridge of incidence. And certain past interpretations, which also seems to play out as the theater of life, which seems to all weave together, may be interpreted from within as, oh, this means I will not be able to achieve what I want. Or unnecessary friction and frustration in which a person is, for whatever the reason, based on interpretation within, thinking that they can't experience flow on the journey to realizing their vision. So what we want is a flow-based journey to realizing the vision. As far as I'm concerned, this statement here, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, implies many different things. It implies the very obvious of lavish, steady, and dependable income. And it also implies internal peace of integrity and mutual benefit to all. I always say this, imply what would be benefit and spirit of harmony to all. You could say divine evolution. Benefit for me, benefit for others, benefit for divine and evolution. This is how we are really meant to live. Love, an expression of love. So why is it then a person may have, and certainly I did in earlier stages of my journey, certain thinking patterns that required me to go beyond saying it once to myself, which is fine. That's something that you could do in state akin to sleep, prior to going to sleep. To imagine these kinds of statements, or what would imagine that would imply to bring yourself into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. However, I also believe we could do it in the awaking hours. For me, the journey of being able to speak myself into certain states of mind, or imagine myself in a certain state of mind in the moment, I credit it to the making peace with the different interpretations that I had, what I was consciously and unconsciously saying I am too, in regards to the 6 basic fears here from Think and Grow Rich. We got fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love of someone, fear of old age, fear of death. This, in alchemy, we call the transmutation process. The ability to transmute one energy into another. So it's energetic indications that reveal certain thinking patterns in regards to fear. So, as mentioned many times, I don't see fear as a problem. It's something to be understood. Just like in the last video, I said I don't see rejection as a problem. It's something to be understood. Or failure, to me, is not a problem. It is something to be understood. This allows me to be more at peace with the inner and outer aspects of my life. And so, as a person makes peace with these attributes, they're able to reveal the way. They're saying, I am too. They commit to it, and they're able to maintain that feeling because they have made peace with any kind of experiences in the 5 sensory bridge of incidence. Their relationship to those experiences are one of in harmony and in contribution to the vision, or internal peace, we could say, which represents the person's consciousness. So he says, the world and all within it is man's conditioned consciousness objectified. Consciousness is the cause as well as the substance of the entire world. So it is to consciousness that we must turn if we would discover the secret of creation. Knowledge of the law of consciousness and the method of operation, this law will enable you to accomplish all you desire in life. Armed with a working knowledge of this law, you can build and maintain an ideal world. So many of you know that in 2013, I transitioned into consulting. And my years in consulting taught me a lot of things about fear within myself and how different people relate to fear, and how it could conjure up certain interpretations, such as, I won't be able to experience that lavish, steady, dependable income, even though at one point they assumed it as done for some reason during the pathway to the realization of that vision. They identified with certain interpretations, thus bringing them into different states of mind. So then they might show up and say, I tried everything in my business and I couldn't get the income sources to increase. I couldn't get my revenues to increase. And they would talk about their marketing. And I'd say, you tried everything? Everything? Are you sure? Because if this world is infinite potential, then there are infinite pathways to the realization of your vision. Perhaps they have certain interpretations. So we would find through conversations, such as the questions that I had included in Thursday's video, certain interpretations they have within themselves, about themselves, in regards to income or business growth, regarding poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love of someone, old age or death, or something like that. And These different fear-based interpretations would cloud their thinking. It would seem to create confusions between divergent perspective and convergent perspectives. Divergent being able to look at things from many different perspectives, and convergent being able to sequence the perspectives into completion. So one of the ways that I stimulate, and this is the key, my goal is not to tell people what to do. They already know what to do, but to stimulate them back into the state of being, which is they have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. That's the state of mind. And so I say, really, both online and offline? You tried newspaper, television, radio, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. What about postcards, handbills, catalogs, brochures, coupons, signage? Then they might say something like, well, I prefer it to be more of a referral based. Already I'm starting to see certain patterns of thinking play out in regards to their interpretation regarding these aspects. And so I say, okay, you like the more of a referral approach. What about networking functions, host beneficiaries, seminars, events, trade shows? And by the way, if any of you are interested in these kinds of discussions, I had a 3-hour video I put together on Jay Abraham's book. I recommend watching it. I'll put a link in the description to that. But my goal is not to tell them what to do. My goal is to stimulate potentiality, possibility. It's not to say that you have to do these things. It is to reveal to them that in a certain state of mind, you see these potentialities. So they might say, well, I am interested in a host-beneficiary relationship. What is that? I say, well, that's involving somebody that has the access to the ideal prospects that you're looking for. It could be something like, for example, in my own personal experience, I built relationship with accountants when I was building my IT business. And because accountants have access to a lot of different businesses because they do their taxes and their bookkeeping, I was able to get access to those clients through referrals because the accountants were very happy with the kind of business my team was doing for them. And so they say, well, that's interesting. And then I hear the statements of what they are unconsciously saying I am too, if these statements exist, such as, well, I don't believe that the accountants will accept me because of this and that. Or, I find every time I start a relationship with someone, it ends up going in a different direction, not ideal, and they start sharing all these things. And I'll say, look, these are the things that we have not made peace with. These are interpretations regarding the fears. So, Joseph Campbell said it one time, I believe, the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you have to do these things. I mean, if you got to do these things. And however, if you make peace with these things, these attributes in fear, you'll automatically do one or some different variation of these things. And what we will notice is that when they make peace with those attributes of what they're afraid of, which they're potentially seeing as the outcome, once they make peace with those attributes, they automatically express and do some of these things. And I would like you personally to reflect upon this in your life. We have many examples of ourselves and others who really know what they want to do. I mean, it's genuinely what they want to do, and seem to have challenge in allowing themselves to express in those areas. That's because their conditioned consciousness, for whatever the reason may be, includes certain interpretations regarding fear and what we want to do within ourselves. And if you serve others, is to help them overcome these fears by essentially making peace with the fears, by not shaming them and saying fear is a problem, you have a problem. Your failures are your problem, or your rejection is your problem. But really helping them understand through a dialogue, such as the one that we're doing right here, to help them essentially suggest to themselves what it is that's ideal. So then within themselves, they automatically identify with I am in relation to the different aspects which we would call empowering or uplifting or true and resonant thinking in relation to fear. We could use these categories here: fear of poverty, fear of criticism, ill health, loss of love of someone, old age, and death. When we make peace with certain interpretations regarding fear, in which we seem to be labeling them and projecting into these categories, we make peace with it by simply going back to the cause within, realizing that the cause is within. So we do this within ourselves. We say, I am the cause based on what I call upon, I am to, or identify with, or assume myself to be, or believe myself to be, or the perception or the perspective that I'm identifying with. That's what it is. And we change it through our imaginal act, through our inner dialogue, through an autosuggestion, or something that would imply that you already are that person that you aspire to be right now, knowing that when you bring yourself back into it, based on what has been implied to yourself in consciousness, then you live from the perspective, and as you maintain that perspective, it becomes your self-image. Now, this is true for behaviors, for skills, the way we think, our environments, and so forth. I would recommend and I would suggest encouraging yourself, really doing what you love to do. So this is the key. We keep it simple. Do what you really love to do. Imagine what you would really love to imagine. Think how you would really love to think. Because we know that love transcends interpretation regarding fear. We don't see fear as a problem. We see what we are identifying with and make peace with it via love. So, as he says here, knowledge of the law of consciousness and the method of operating this law will enable you to accomplish all you desire in life. Armed with a working knowledge of this law, you can build and maintain an ideal world. And so we go back here, where he says, then he repeated the statement over and over again. As mentioned, it could be said once, or it could be said whatever amount of times till you bring yourself in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, or imagine, or do, or whatever would imply, or behave, or whatever, what would imply. The key word is imply, that you are that person now on the realization of lavish, steady, dependable income. And so then what ends up happening is he says, filled his mind and crowded all other ideas out of his consciousness. So I really like the idea of the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek, because when I look at the different areas of my life and conversations with others, I find that when a person did transcend past certain thinking patterns in regards to poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love of someone, old age, death, essentially they made peace with it. The peacemaking actually happened on the journey to realizing the vision via the commitment and maintaining that consciousness which represented love. Again, it is here in this regard, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. Now, if this statement resonates with you and brings you into that feeling of the wish fulfilled and love in mutual harmony with all, really confirming that relationship of your internal I am with the outer aspects of your life, then I would suggest working with this. The power behind transmutation of fear-based energy via our thinking, what we say I am too, is something that was taught by the ancient alchemists. It was actually brought to my awareness from Think and Grow Rich in the word transmutation. And I went and looked at the origins of the word transmutation, bringing me into ancient alchemical traditions. And then what I found, and through working with this information, we can transmute, we really can transmute the fear-based emotion over to a love-based intuitive feeling connection in relation to the vision based on our thinking, observing, such as the process that I went through, is just asking some stimulating questions to ourselves. What is it really that we are unconsciously saying I am to? And that helps our journey tremendously, because then it's easier to assume a certain state of mind and identify with it. Because we know we are safe in mind, as I had brought this up in last Sunday's video, to recognize that in mind we are safe. And we don't need to be afraid of the thinking patterns. We can change them, and we can identify with different thinking patterns, what we say I am too. And the applications and the power behind this, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, has actually revealed itself in different areas of my life, including finding a higher degree of inner peace and love in my imagination, in my mind. I remember a few years ago, after I had transcended past a lot of interpretation regarding fear, I had a dream, and actually we would call it the beginnings of a nightmare because you kind of had a certain feeling. I had actually awoken in the same room that I was sleeping in, which was a hotel, except it had a certain kind of, let's say, eerie feeling to it. And then right beside me was someone that looked like Kayako. She's the woman from the movie The Grudge. Some of you might have seen that movie. And I looked over and I noticed that I automatically started laughing. And this was not a common occurrence during these kinds of experiences in my nightmares. I would normally just try to get out of the nightmare. But I remember I automatically started laughing, and I felt the energy of the entire room start to change. And she started to change, actually. She started laughing. And then my dream ended on that. And I woke up and I said, isn't that interesting? How when we make peace within ourselves regarding fear, in our own imagination, in our own dreams, and as we go about the day-to-day journey, we really see things for how we really are, which is how we aspire to be. And we're able to sense fear and change our thinking around real time, and thus transmute that energy and then actually experience the projection of it in our mind's eye and in reality as well. So in summary, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I would suggest making peace with certain interpretations regarding fear. If you make peace with these attributes and you continue to make peace with these attributes, you'll find that it'll be easier for you to assume I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, and see the potentialities to be able to express it. And I would add also, you'll find yourself automatically expressing and doing perhaps some of the things that I had suggested, or other things, whatever it is that is ideal for you in your bridge of incidents on the journey to realizing your vision. Now let's go ahead and conclude this with a auto-suggestion to further contribute. You could say, I recognize that the cave I fear to enter can hold the treasure that I seek. As a result, I'm able to make peace within in regards to certain thinking patterns in relation to fear. I realize that I'm able to move through fear with a greater degree of flow because I have the ability to transmute energy. And through the transmutation of the energy within, I bring myself into the ideal state of mind, confirming that I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, and maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled in relation to that to realize my vision from a place of love and flow. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.